How are you?
Well, Hashem, you.
Yeah, good.
That's a great background.
Yeah, it's a bit of fun. Bit of fun.
Just made you host.
Yeah,
I
sure.
shall see you there at the Verbringen.
Right. Yeah. Have one for me. I'll see you there. Yeah.
How was your session earlier?
Interesting. Yeah, good. Interesting. Oh, we just lost Linda.
Huh? Moderating?
I was moderating. Yeah.
Okay, fine. I won't disturb you now, but see you later, Mitzvah Shlomo.
See you later. Thanks.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hello, Penny.
How are you?
Very good, thank you. Been learning lots. How are you doing?
Oh, what are you learning about?
What have I been learning about? I've been learning about Amuna with Rabbi Johnny Voss. I've been learning with Sherim on a Monday morning for about 3 hours at Sem in Israel. So I've been learning masses.
I've been learning practical things.
Yeah, but more the reasons behind why we do things. And also practical things on how to change our attitudes and things like that towards not making commitments that we can't keep, not making promises that we can't stick to, so that our word counts for being important, that kind of stuff.
I call that a chocolate promise.
Exactly.
It means if you're given chocolate and you say, I promise to look after it, knowing full well you're going to eat it.
Right. Exactly. So I'll be there in 5 minutes, which turns out for half an hour.
Yes.
There's 1,000 ways we do that. But yeah, we're keeping well.
Oh, I like my coffee, which is just arriving. It's a bit like the everyman. You put in your order and then you get things.
Get the service.
Thank you. There we are. The waiter has just brought it.
Oh, my husband's getting her pudding.
Where's ours?
I just got the coffee. That was Emily who just passed.
There's a Chabad-wide annual conference that's taking place at the moment, today and tomorrow. Mine hasn't arrived yet, but they sent out in advance a box of like goodies that you would normally get when you're there. So like a bar of chocolate and a muffin and the program and a little time night. It was really sweet.
Oh, that is nice, thoughtful.
Yeah, very.
Well, I love these.
Do that. It's nice when you do that.
They're my favourites.
Yeah.
We had a function online, like a party last week with JLI, and they produced popcorn, which arrived at our door half an hour beforehand to the box.
Right. Similar sort of idea. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's quite sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, I'll give it another minute or two, and then we'll make a start.
I want a chocolate too.
Hello.
They're mon chéri.
Oh, mon chéri.
So if we've got Simon Taffler here, and then Simon unnamed at the front, who's hiding behind the screen.
Hi, Rabbi, it's Simon Finberg.
How are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you.
It's great to see everybody.
On my internet in not been great, which is a little bit nerve-wracking. Hopefully we'll see. Can you hear me? Okay?
No, that's cracking up. It's cracking up.
Hang on.
You're intermittent.
What did you say about Ian? What did I say?
Bear with me.
I'm sorry that haven't got my video on. It's just because we're just finishing dinner. That's all.
Enjoy. Bon appetit.
It smells good.
I hope you can hear. I hope you can.
Simon, if it smells good, please don't give Ben the credit.
How much? 10 million.
1.86 million.
Okay. Well, I won't be contributing to that.
No, it's done already.
Yeah.
I just got a new printer, and you get 3 guides from Xerox with like 200 languages. Amazing.
Have you got an English one?
Hmm?
Which language are you going to learn tonight?
Well, I thought I would do the guide in Hebrew for you all.
Actually, funny enough, but actually, one of my cousins in Israel, actually, his job is to translate technical information, and often it's reference guides.
Mm. Oh, wow. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. What's happened to Shlomo? We've lost him.
I don't think he had a connection, did he?
Can I ask, has anybody paid for this, or how do we pay, or what happened?
I don't know. I don't know.
I think from Charlotte, who's says that the shul policy at this moment during lockdown is not to charge for any of the Zoom events.
Well, that's nice.
Are you the only one who has been paying then?
I have paid for all the JLI courses to date.
We paid for the last one. We did. We paid a less amount, didn't we, than if we'd been in the room.
I can't remember.
But this one, there was no, you didn't have to go on the website or to United Nations or whatever and do anything.
No, but they're all doing that all over the world, all the Zoom ones, which are often you would pay for. They're not charging.
There's free food with this one.
Yeah, you and your chocolates.
And coffee.
I hope it was espresso.
Well, we tonight.
So we've got a new espresso machine, but and my husband loves it. But I actually am addicted to Blend 37.
Oh no!
I adore it. Really strong.
Has he got a Jura machine?
Has he got a what?
Jura, J-U-R-A.
No, I don't know what it is. It's some fancy contraption that arrived last week, and he loves it.
I think we got Rabbi Odze back.
Really sorry, everybody, having internet issues again. I'm going to, I've done it on my phone with data, so that should be better. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Right. I'm just going to quickly just... No, I know, but because on my phone I'm doing a few things at the same time, trying to download the material so I can still share with you. So you might have to do without seeing me on this occasion. But anyway, I wanted to share with you a PowerPoint. That's just helpful as we go through this. So we should be okay because I'm using my data as opposed to Wi-Fi, so we should be fine. If you just bear with me just a couple of minutes. Next time I'll download this in advance in case we have to do this again. But I don't know what it is about Tuesday night. I've never had an issue other than Tuesday night. Last time we had this and this time, which is very frustrating. Apologies.
It's the power of your core group of students.
Is that what you think it is?
Definitely, yeah, I'm looking at them.
I think it's the Satan trying to, they say that whenever there's a strong power of Kedusha, of holiness, to counter that, there's a strong power of evil that's right to counterbalances it. So whenever there's a strong evil, that's because there's a strong power of holiness. I think that's really what's happening. It's okay. Here we go. Now, just bear with me a minute. Okay, just basic. Okay, so just a few words of introduction for the series, just as I'm getting this up on my phone. So the truth is that this series could be done at any time, and not only to do with coronavirus, but we could hold this anytime. And in addition to that, this could have been done, and I considered doing it actually as the previous one, but because we had something as a run up to Shavuot, I felt that it's okay to hold on this particular one and start now because it's relevant anytime. And the basis of it is, in terms of the understanding of what's happening, is the centrality of the Jewish home. That's what we're going to look at, and how to make it even a little bit holier than it already is. The truth is that one can't become more or less of a Jew, but what we can do is modulate how our Jewish homes will be, how Jewish our homes will be. And really, I think this seems to be the call of the hour at the moment, which is to raise the temperature 1 degree at a time by introducing Yiddishkeit, really, warmth of Yiddishkeit into our homes. And the truth is, as I said, this task is always essential. However, what's interesting is that the shul and other communal institutions have always occupied an important place in Jewish life. Nevertheless, the home is really the Jewish nerve center, where a family experiences Judaism, and that's really what we're going to look at, and where Jewish values are strengthened and transmitted. And whereas the focal point of many other religions is their houses of worship, and really that can be seen particularly by the Catholics, how they're putting so much pressure for houses of worship to be open, because without that they're devoid of prayer. Prayer only happens there. But we know that for Judaism, the heartbeat of Judaism is really in the home. And this is beautifully expressed in the episode of our forefather Jacob, who, when he leaves his parents' home and he travels to Haran to start a family, we know, I'm sure we're familiar with the story, as night fell, he stopped at the hilltop, surrounded himself with stones for protection. And by the way, can I just pause there a moment? And can I just check with you that this is, do you have because I'm on my phone, I can't see. Oh, I actually do see it. Just have to double check that it's being recorded. Yeah. So he stops on the way and he goes to sleep, and he puts these stones around his head, which really constituted his first independent adult home. At this moment in time, Stephen Isaacs, or Penny really, is the host, and I need to share my screen. Penny, do you mind just switching that to making me the host? Because I logged out.
I do that.
You hover over my name, and then you'll have an opportunity to make me host. If you go to participants, and then you go to more, it'll say make host on my name.
It doesn't seem to want to do that.
Participants.
All right. Okay. Participants.
And then on my name, you'll have like a more option if you hover over it.
Yeah. Right.
Make host.
Doesn't seem to want to do that. Just says.
What options do you have there?
None. It just says Stephen Isaacs host me. Mute more. Oh, maybe more.
There you go, more. Yeah. Click on more. Yeah.
Rename.
No, make host.
No.
No, you need to click on me, not on you. So by my name, click more by my name.
Okay. Oops. Zoom out. No, that won't do. Oh dear. I think I'll get a child to do this. Right, I'll try again. Try again. Sorry.
Don't worry.
Participants. Go up.
And then under my name, do more,
Yeah.
and then it gives the option to make host.
Yes. Make host. Okay.
There you
Right.
go. Apologies about this, everyone. I'll be right with
Right.
you. Those who have joined slightly later, I had technical issues. I've had
Do
to
you
join
want to
from my
change
phone.
the host? Yes, I certainly do.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
I'm now the host. Thank you very much. Well done. Well done. Round of applause for Penny, everyone.
Yay.
I'm just going to bring up, which one is it? Oh, just bear with me because I've not done this on my phone before to make sure I share the right thing. Otherwise it could be embarrassing. A colleague of mine had shared by accident during a meeting, shared the screen, which was her WhatsApp messages to the entire group, and couldn't quite, and her computer froze and couldn't actually stop sharing, and that was quite embarrassing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right, worst nightmare. So I'm trying to ensure I don't do the same thing. Not that I have my WhatsApp messages up, but
can you explain why Jacob was putting stones around his head?
yes. Okay, so let me continue. He was explaining that was to protect himself, and that was like a practical thing because to protect himself from animals around and so on. And what he did was, when he woke up in the morning, he dedicated as a monument to God the stone that was closest to his head, and declared that the location would later be the place of the temple. Right, and therefore, fascinatingly, the cornerstone for the future temple was a stone from a Jewish home, effectively. And that's because the goal of the temple, and therefore its replacement as we have today, i.e. the shul, is not to limit the religious experiences to those places, but to really infuse each home with holiness. And the sanctity of the Jewish home is the necessary condition for the sanctity of the house of God. It's that way round. And over time, we've lost that a little bit. And the current circumstances give us a golden opportunity to re-educate ourselves about the true and real Jewish nerve center, not to take anything away from shul experience, but where the nerve center for Judaism starts, and that is the home, i.e. shul is meant to complement the home and not the other way around. And this concept is expressed actually in a Talmudic statement where it says that just as the temple service brought atonement to the Jewish people, so do our tables bring atonement today. And so what they're referring to there is this is achieved by inviting guests. This is Hachnasat Orchim, inviting guests to dine with us. And so therefore the idea here is that it's not only the communal buildings that take the place of the temple, but my little table in my home does that as well. And that really demonstrates the centrality of the Jewish home in Jewish thought. And therefore it would always be commendable to expand the observance of Judaism in our home, but now even more so, and really using the opportunity of the current circumstances to look at this a little bit closer. We have no idea how long the current situation will continue, leaving us at home in the way that we are. But what I'm suggesting let's make the best use of this time. And then when we look back in a few years from now, we won't only remember the suffering and the hardships, but we'll also be able to point to some positive personal progress and development in our Jewish home as well. So our first lesson really takes a deep, so those are really words of introduction for the series. Our first lesson, as the blurb said, takes a deep dive into the Jewish morning. And when I say morning, I mean M-O-R-N-I-N-G, not M-O-U. And then we're going to subsequently cover things about eating and meals and prayers and Shabbos and so on. So sometimes getting out of bed can be a very difficult assignment, or maybe it's just only me. But it may come only after a good few battles with a snooze button or a good few prods by your kids, depending on your circumstances, whatever it may be. But sometimes it can be difficult to get up in the morning. And once we're up, those who suffer from withdrawal symptoms and our coffee drinkers know what it's like before we get our morning dose of caffeine. I say we, I don't have coffee in the morning, but those who do, I'm told. Interestingly, a little personal anecdote, I don't drink coffee really. I really enjoy the taste. I discovered when thinking about this when I was much older, not as in when I was younger from when I'm now, but later on in life, not in like post-teenage years, when people were offering up and I would instinctively resist and say, no, thank you. I realized when thinking about it, the reason for it is because both my parents are addicted to coffee, and you could not speak to them unless they had their coffee in the morning. It was like, they couldn't function. And I sort of subconsciously said to myself, I don't want to get to that point, and therefore I would restrict myself not to have coffee so I don't become addicted to it. It's quite powerful in that way. My father would have to spend quite a while before Yom Kippur weaning himself off it so that he doesn't suffer over Yom Kippur. So we, you know, that is something that exists out there, and the opening of our day really sets the tone for the day, and we have to try and start on the right foot. In fact, the way we wake up in the morning reveals to an extent our philosophy of life. To understand this, let's examine the very first words of the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law. It says as follows in English: strengthen yourself like a lion to rise in the morning to serve your Creator. You should awaken the morning as soon as you wake up from sleep, rise eagerly to the service of your Creator. So let's listen to the wording it uses. Awaking in the morning should not be a sort of reactive experience. I woke up because I couldn't sleep anymore. That would be considered being woken up by the morning. What it's saying is rather we should awaken the morning. So if we awaken, that's the word, you should awaken the morning. That's what it says. What it means is the day will have begun because we are ready and eager to take on the day. Do you see the subtle difference? It's not that I was woken up, but rather I wake up the morning. I'm excited to get up and to do what needs to be done. And this statement is really very powerful. And on a day when we are about to do something new and exciting, we know what the feeling is like. We're very eager to get out of bed, irrespective of when we fell asleep. The difficulty is when we sense that life is same old, same old. And once we realize that life is not random, and that no day is an accident, and that we were put on here for a purpose, that each day is imbued with a unique mission, that the entire vast eternal plan rests on our shoulders. I know those are big statements, but you know, if we thought like that, it would change the way we get out of bed in the morning for those of us who struggle. And so we awaken, and how we awaken expresses our philosophy of life. I want to share with you an anecdote from a very saintly rabbi called Rabbi Shlomo Odze. He actually lived not far from, he was in sort of the South Hampstead area, believe it or not. Very holy man, very special man. He passed away in 1970. And he used to wake up quite early each morning, and his students once asked him about, you know, why he did that. And he replied as follows. He said, listen to this: when my time on earth comes to an end, I will have to account for how well I lived up to the responsibilities with which I was charged. Obviously, the accounting will begin with the first paragraph of the Code of Jewish Law and proceed from there in order. Listen to what he says. If I have to be less than adequate somewhere, I rather that not happen on the very first page of the accounting where it says, wake up like a lion. I thought it was really very, very powerful. So that leads us really to the first ritual of the Jewish day. The first ritual of the Jewish day is immediately when we wake up, whilst we are still in bed, we recite really a 10-second prayer. Let me see if I can share this with you. What am I sharing over here? I hope I'm not sharing the wrong thing. No, that didn't work. Okay, is my screen shared? No. I've done it on my phone, so I don't know what's being shared. No, I'm gonna. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't think this is going to work for this evening in terms of the text, so you're going to have to remind me. But they're quite familiar, and they're from the Siddur. I apologize for the technical issues that I'm having this evening. Okay, so the first prayer that we have, the first thing that we say, the first ritual that we have, is this 10-second prayer, Modeh Ani. Okay, Modeh Ani is the Hebrew, and we're going to look at this for a few moments. The first of anything matters very much in life. We know that, right? Start as you mean to continue, all those sorts of things. And we want to make sure that the very first use of our speech is dedicated to a holy cause. And how does that work? So this affirmation can be recited in any language. But given how short it is, it's possible for us to learn it in Hebrew and also understand its meaning. And that's what we're going to try and do this evening. Now, some people are not used to verbalizing prayers because we think of prayer as a meditation. And the truth is that prayer in the heart is a healthy start, right? But the Jewish way to pray is to also verbalize the words. And this is actually proving very challenging for us in the current circumstances when we're talking about looking at opening shuls and coming back to daven, where they're saying you're not allowed to sing. And we're saying, how can you daven without singing? Right? It's a big challenge, right? We verbalize the word. Verbalizing the words is a big part of what we do. So prayer must come from the heart, but it should not remain in the heart, right? In order for the experiences to embrace not just the soul, but also the physical body and human condition, it has to find some sort of tangible expression. Preferably, the words should be audible. Some have the custom to recite this prayer while sitting up in bed with our head bowed, but certainly we say it straight away whilst we're still in bed. Now, why do we do this in this way? So one function of this sort of prayer or meditation is to orient ourselves for the day, to remind ourselves that we were given the gift of life another day for a particular purpose, and to inspire us to pursue this purpose with zest. That's what it's there to do, number one. Number two, a second function is to express gratitude, not only for the gift of life, but also for the gift of rejuvenation, right? I was tired and worn out at night, and I woke fresh and crisp, hopefully, those times, right? Even if it takes a few moments to get there, but we're awake in a different way. We went to bed tired, and now we woke up. And these two functions of Modeh Ani are crucial to our mental health and emotional balance. You know, over the past few decades, I've spoken about this before, modern psychology has found that there are a number of universal keys to happiness, right? And among them are, number one, living with a sense of purpose, right? Logotherapy, one of my favorites, as many of you will know, Viktor Frankl, a sense of purpose. And number two, a habit of feeling and expressing gratitude. I've spoken about this before as well. And what's fascinating is these two functions of Modeh Ani do exactly that. They give us a sense of purpose. God gave me another day, clearly for a reason. And they give us a feeling and expression of gratitude. I give gratitude. I offer gratitude to Hashem for everything that I have. Now, Jewish prayers convey multiple layers of meaning, and it's important to examine these prayers closely to notice the nuances that go ahead, that go sort of undetected with a sort of cursory read or a quick read in the way that we may do things sometimes. So let's look at this a little bit further and understand the nuances here. And here are a few examples with Modeh Ani. We live, there we go, everyone. Sorry, managed to get it working on my video at least, even if I can't share the screen. So we live today in what some call the I generation or the me generation. I've spoken about this in Shul also. And you'll notice that we don't say Ani Modeh, I give thanks, or I give gratitude, which is how you would say it, by the way, in modern Hebrew. But rather we say first Modeh, and then only afterwards we say Ani. The I comes after the gratitude. And so when we wake up, right, what we're saying is that our egos come second. The Ani is there, right? We have to sense ourselves. But the Modeh, the sense of gratitude and sort of submission to Hashem comes first. Along these lines, it's interesting to note that Modeh Ani is recited before we wash our hands in the morning. We'll discuss this in a few moments in more detail about washing our hands. Now, on a basic level, it can be recited before we wash our hands because Modeh Ani doesn't contain any clear reference to Hashem's name. It doesn't contain God's name, so it's not holy in that sense. But on a deeper level, Modeh Ani is telling us it's a statement of faith that comes right from our soul. And therefore, at this early moment of the day, right, we've yet to become scored by life. We're pure and holy. And therefore, a statement from the depths of our soul is so special and so powerful that nothing, not even richly impure hands, can undermine it, which is really a very, very powerful statement. And people sometimes talk about the need to be grateful in general. We'll hear that, right, which is true, without it being directed in any particular entity. And in Judaism, gratitude is always felt and expressed towards something, right? Either to a person or to Hashem. For the gift of life, we direct our thanks to Hashem. And that's what we're saying, Modeh Ani lefanecha, right? That is the Hebrew. We're saying, I give gratitude, I give, right? If I translate it like word for word. Usually translated, I give gratitude, but it's gratitude I give in before you, in front of you, because we're communicating with our sense of gratefulness to Hashem, right? To that, and we're happy to be alive, and we are doubly happy that someone, i.e. Hashem, has made sure and made it happen. We refer here to God. Bear with me. I don't want to have what happened to me. I need to plug in my my phone. It's about to die. I don't want to have what happened to me on the just before Shavuot. I was so engrossed in my presentation that I didn't see the message that it was sort of battery low, and then it died. There we go. Okay, I plugged it in. So here, then we refer to Moda Ani Lefanecha. We refer to Hashem as our king, right? Melech as our king. This conveys to us that the world is not sort of a random jungle, but under the control of and dominion of Hashem, and that the king, sort of the commander-in-chief, is laid out. There's a mission, there's a purpose, and it's laid out for us an order of the day. Every day there is command and an order. And we then continue to say Nishmati, we refer to my soul, because we acknowledge that I have a unique soul, tailor-made for my unique mission. And then we refer to his mercy, right? Melech chai v'kayim shechazarta bi nishmati bechem la'raba emunatecha. And within that, we refer to God's mercy. We often take it as something we deserve, right? However, not always necessarily. If we're honest with ourselves, do we deserve everything we request? And this prayer really reminds us that life is a gift given by Hashem in compassion and mercy. And a final thought on Moda Ani is as follows: that throughout the day we will engage in many good deeds without being mindful of how about how this is part of our divine mission. That's not really the way we always necessarily think. We do good because hopefully we're good people. Do we, as a result, sort of forfeit the credit for these good deeds because we didn't do it with the intention of it being part of the divine mission? Absolutely not. And the reason for that is because of Moda Ani. When we say Moda Ani in the morning, we make it very clear that we intend the entire day to be in the service of God. And that's enough to power any good deed we do throughout the day, even if we didn't sort of come back to this thought when we wrote out that check for charity or whatever other good deed that we may have done. And so that's our start. That really is where we're at. It's a 10-second prayer, and I'll come to language soon, but I encourage you to learn it in Hebrew so that we can, one can say it if this is not something you already do. And it's important that I make that disclaimer. There's an assumption here which is really probably and hopefully in many cases unfair. But what I'm going to do is appeal to sort of the lowest common denominator in the nicest way. And hopefully through that, we'll all learn something. So even for those of us who do say Moda Ani or may be familiar with Moda Ani, it's likely, myself included, weren't necessarily familiar to the extent that maybe hopefully I've given some insights to the prayer itself. And I'm trying to sort of balance the more advanced, the more observant. Yes, Elizabeth. By the way, I'm on my phone, so I can only see 4 screens. So if you're not on my screen, just unmute and speak. You can interrupt me. Don't worry.
Can I just add something that was very interesting? I was learning about it with Rabbi Sachs, and he said that the exact, I think it's about, is it 15 seconds it takes pretty much to say the whole thing through.
Okay,
However many seconds it was that it takes to say it through is the exact amount of seconds it takes for your body, your brain, from the time you wake up, your body to be able to stand up without falling over.
That's absolutely incredible. Thank you for sharing that. That's typical for Rabbi Tatz because he's got a medical background, so he would weave that in. That's fabulous. Thank you. I'll share with you another little one. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. I'll show you another little one. At the end of it, we finish off with, there's so much, but Rabbi, you've reminded me about something. Rabbi, it said we end off with Rabba emunatecha, which we generally translate as that our faith in you is great. Emunatecha, which is emuna, our faith. We have great faith in you, Hashem. And actually, it's the other way around. We're acknowledging that Hashem has great faith in us. Because you say emunatecha, your faith. It's not our faith in you. Your faith means your faith in me, to have given me another day, to have given me life, to say, I believe, I'm going to give you another day because I believe you will fulfill your purpose and mission in life. And that's a real very powerful and empowering thought, that for me has been very powerful when I say, Modani, I really sort of, when you end up say, Rabba emunatecha, your faith is great, i.e. your faith, God, in me is great, and I hope to fulfill that. Okay, so thank
One
you.
other thing for the women out there, for the girls out there, is we have a slightly different pronunciation at the beginning. It's moda'ani for women.
It's moda'ani.
For women,
for
girls.
Yeah. There's a technical thing there, which is a more modern thing for those who have that thing. You won't find it in early Sidurim. So if you most of the Sidurim you have at home, you probably won't find it in there. But that's a grammatical thing relating to male, masculine, and feminine, which in rabbinic Hebrew doesn't always. It's a modern Hebrew thing, and that's why it wasn't in the Sidurim, because in rabbinic Hebrew that actually doesn't make much difference. But no, that's a fair point. Thank you. Okay, so one of the unique and for some very bizarre features of Judaism is that it always issues laws, not only to areas of morality, which you would expect it to do, and how we treat others, etc., and spirituality, how much Torah to study and all that sort of stuff, but also it issues laws in areas of personal and regular life. What we eat, how we go about our work, how we get dressed, everything, the do's and don'ts span literally absolutely every single area of our life. And the reason for this is for twofold. Number one, follow on from what we had in the last course about the connection to God through mitzvot, and the idea of being a relationship, and therefore in a relationship as a means to connect. Our relationship, which I mentioned, the rabbi said it's like a marriage, so therefore every mitzvah we fulfill reveals and strengthens our bond with God, and therefore a relationship with Hashem that focuses only on spirituality misses the point, because a true relationship is not, it doesn't exclude anything, it's all encompassing. And therefore Hashem wants a relationship with us, and that means all of us. That means every single thing that we do during the day, that will apply as well as a connection to Hashem. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the nature of human beings and the physical world is to feel separate and independent from Hashem. That is our default position. It takes effort to feel connected. It's not something that comes naturally. We have to work at it. And the purpose of creation is that Hashem wants us to change the status quo and invite him to be expressed and to feel at home sort of in this ungodly realm, right? To elevate the material to being spiritual. And for this reason, specifically the mitzvot pertaining to the most mundane areas of life accomplish this mission most powerfully, right? These areas of life seem sort of the most removed from Hashem, and therefore, it really, in an ironic way, constitute the best way to connect to him, right? If they're the lowest level of existence, then by connecting to him there, we make these areas of life worthy of God's presence, and we've truly built a home for Hashem in this world, even in the lowliest of realms. And therefore, we have, instructions for absolutely everything. And so with that introduction, let's talk a little bit about getting dressed the Jewish way. So one guideline with regards to getting dressed is that we get reasonably dressed even if we're staying at home and no one will be seeing us. And the second one is we try to get dressed in a modest way. And by doing so, we remind ourselves of a very important truth, that God is present with us at all times. Right? More generally, so by bringing God and Hashem into the realm of how we dress, we make sure to connect with him in this area of our life and bring his presence into in a very physical way, in a very real way, in an ongoing way in our life. So that's one guidance. Another guidance and guideline is, as a matter of Jewish custom, is that to do the right before the left. So in general, wherever the Torah discusses an activity that is done with or to one hand or foot, it gives preference to the right over the left. There's actually one exception to that. Anybody know the exception to where you meant to do the left before the right?
Is it tying laces?
Very good. Yes, well done, Elizabeth. I will tell Rabbi Ross that your learning is paying off.
That was him, Rabbi Tax again, I'm afraid.
Oh, it's Rabbi Tatz. Okay, I'll tell him. It's okay. I'll tell him. But yes, correct. It's the left lace. So when we're talking about tying laces, you do the left before the right. The reason for that is because it's associated with tying knots, which is tefillin, and tefillin is done on the left hand and not the right hand, and therefore knot tying is associated with the left, that holiness. And so, but that's the one exception. But otherwise, every other area, unless you're left-handed, in which sometimes that might be different, but generally speaking, we refer to give preference to the right over the left, and in many cases, even for a left-handed person, the right is given preference over the left. Now, The mystical explanation for this is that God operates through two general channels. There's a channel of chesed, which is kindness and mercy, and there's a channel which is called gevura, which is judgment, so strict judgment. And so chesed is the attitude of giving despite the recipient being less than fully deserving, right? That's why we have mercy on somebody. They may not deserve something, but we have mercy on them, right? When we ask for mercy, it means by strict letter of the law, I may not be entitled to it, but please have mercy on me and give it to me anyway. That's in a legal sense, we apply that, and also in our everyday life. When we talk about having mercy on somebody, that's what really we're referring to. We're going above and beyond the letter of the law. Whereas gevura, the sort of judgment, the strict letter of the law, is an attitude of sort of matching the blessing to correspond to human behavior. Meaning, in a very practical way, that would be Hashem dealing with us and saying, you have done X, Y, Z, therefore, these amount of mitzvot, therefore, in return for that, you will be given X amount of reward. It's a, measure for measure type of approach, which is dangerous. For me, and maybe for many of us. And so we, of course, prefer that Hashem interacts with us through chesed as much as possible, through mercy and kindness. And therefore, the Torah teaches us that the human is created in the divine image, right? We were created in God's image, in B'Tselem Elokim, in the image of God. And Kabbalah elaborates on this concept and explains that our right side corresponds to chesed, kindness, and our left side to gevura, judgment. And therefore, and what we're... Sorry? No, okay, I thought somebody was asking a question. So therefore, accordingly, what we're saying here, and the Kabbalah also tells us that our activity triggers and shapes God's interaction with us, right? So what happens is by prioritizing the right over the left in our actions, we hope to sort of tilt more to the divine approach of the right, which is with kindness and mercy, than the left, which is gevura, which is strict judgment and letter of the law. And so that's why there is this emphasis on the right and doing things with the right and so on. Now, Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, mentions that we ought to wash our face. And by the way, this applies practically in getting dressed. So we should it's the right before the left. We always put on the right arm first, the right leg first, and taking off, it's the left first and then the right. It's always prioritizing the right over the left. We put the right shoe on first, then the left shoe, do up the left shoe, and then do up the right shoe. And again, because of the knot being on the left. But the principle is, this is not, that we're saying, and we're linking into this concept of the kindness of Hashem. Now, the next thing that is mentioned by the Shulchan Aruch in the order of our morning is that we ought to wash our face each morning. Now, you might think that's a bit surprising, but bearing in mind he wrote this in the 16th, 17th century, that although it's universal today, but before modern plumbing became widespread, it wasn't widely practiced in that way. But either way, even today, I think there's an important message here. Jewish law and custom is not limited to sort of, new and unusual customs. It also infuses universal behaviors with new life. And so washing one's face in Judaism goes beyond the concept of comfort and freshness and cleanliness. And what the Shulchan Aruch tells us and explicitly says that it is the only way we remind ourselves that we are created in the image of God. And I think what it means by this is saying that, if there was a statue of a king that was allowed to become murky and lose its luster, that would be an affront to the king. But on the other hand, if a person washes and polishes a statue that's honoring the king, then that is a great honor for the king. And therefore, in a similar sense, we afford honor to Hashem. If, as I said before, we are created in the image of God, then by freshening our face each morning, we are giving honor to that image of God. So it goes beyond, obviously there's the cleanliness, but even doing that very mundane activity that would anyway do, just to sort of incorporate within that thought of how we are honoring God's creation. God created us in his image, and therefore we are making sure the image is a respectable image. Now, today, everyone is talking about hand washing, right? Hand washing is there everywhere. And we are used to being told and told again that there are guidelines for how to properly wash our hands, right? This is something which is everybody rightly sort of bangs on about and say, this is the way to wash your hands. Don't just do this is how you do it this way, do it that way. Otherwise, it's not going to be effective. Now, for us rabbis, this is music to our ears because we are so often going on about details and how if you don't do things correctly, they're not as effective. But it's difficult to connect to. Yet here, in a very real way, we have an opportunity to appreciate and understand why details matter. And in a similar sense, Jewish law outlines specific guidelines for a different type of hand washing with a very different goal to be done each morning. So after waking up and we go to the bathroom and get dressed and doing anything else that we need to for that, but before eating and reciting blessings, what we do is we wash our hands ritually and a blessing is recited. And this should take, because a blessing is recited, needs to take place anywhere other than the bathroom. So what we do here is similar to how we wash our hands before bread, but with one key difference, and that is we alternate on the hands. So we remove any removable objects such as rings or dirt. We fill a cup with water. The reason why we fill a cup is important. I'll come to it in a moment, why we can't just sort of rinse our hands under the tap. We pour it over the right hand, an entire hand, sort of from wrist to fingertips, and then we do the same on the left hand, and then we repeat this procedure 2 additional times. And we'll be familiar with this also from when going to visit a cemetery, and this is the way that we wash our hands, right? So there's a different way when than the way we wash before bread. By the way, those who are left-handed reverse the order and begin with the left hand. Then we dry our hands, and then we make the bracha al netilat yadayim, which is where we are familiar with from washing for bread. Now, this is the first of many blessings we hope to recite during the day. In fact, we're told that it's admirable to recite 100 blessings a day, which you might think is a lot. By the time you do amidas and you do blessings on food and lots of other things, we're actually not far off. Shabbat is a bit more tricky because you don't have 18 blessings, but okay, we don't have time to go into it now. But with reciting blessings over foods and so on, we can quite easily get to 100. So why do we wash our hands in this way in the morning? So there's a number of reasons. Number one, this is to represent service in the temple. So the Kohanim, the priests, would rinse their hands and feet each day before engaging in their divine duty and tasks in the temple, in the Beit HaMikdash. And as I mentioned in the beginning, our homes can be a miniature holy temple. And so we have duties no less important than those of the Kohanim in the temple. And therefore we wash our hands at the outset of each day to remind us that just like the Kohanim of old, we are here to serve Hashem. That what I do in my home should be representative of a service of Hashem. And this also explains why we specifically use a washing cup and not just use the tap for this act, because it commemorates the kior. I think in English it's called a laver. Is that correct? Am I correct in the translation of that? Sort of big elaborate washing device that they had, which the Kohanim used in the temple, and they used to then, and that reminds us, again, links us to that idea. Number two, practically cleanliness, right? During the night, our hands may touch different parts of our bodies, and therefore it's best to have clean hands before we make a blessing. We're going to say God's name, we're going to pray, and therefore our hands need to be clean. And a third reason is actually ritual impurity. And so here the Torah presents a host of laws relating to purity and impurity. They have nothing to do with sort of filth that can be washed away by water. The rationale of these are really challenging. They are profound. It really exceeds our... We don't have time to go into it today, but I'll share 2 elements of these are relevant here. Number one is a dead body conveys ritual impurity. We're familiar with that from cemeteries. And number 2, immersion in water, a mikveh, removes this ritual impurity. And so sleep is similar to the state of death. So Kabbalah explains, for example, that a portion, 1/60th of our soul, departs from our body during sleep, and therefore triggers a form of ritual impurity. It's like we have passed away on some level, which only remains on our hands after waking up. And therefore, washing the hands removes this ritual impurity. And so therefore, so those are the 3 reasons. As I say again, number one, it reminds us about the temple service, that we are priests in our own way. We are told we are mamlechet kahanim, a kingdom of priests, that what we do in our home should be a service of God. Number 2, it's a practical cleanliness thing. And number 3, and by the way, there's no order of priority, I'm just mentioning them. And number 3, it's the ritual impurity that we have passed away on some level. 1/60th of our soul has gone to heaven. And come back, and therefore we have, it's like we have been revived from the dead, and therefore we have a state of impurity which we need to wash off, and that's why we do it in that way. I mentioned earlier that every element of Jewish practice has a deeper dimension and a symbolic message that can help shape our thinking, and this is true of this morning wash as well. Soon after waking up, our minds begin to wander, right? It doesn't take long for us to worry about our work day, our lives, our families, and it can result in a weakening of our focus and our resolve. We can feel sort of bogged down already right from the beginning about everything that we have to do. And therefore, the washing of our hands symbolizes the need for us to sort of wash away the worrying impulse that overcomes us at a certain point each morning. And we accomplish this by taking a moment to remember that God is in control of everything and that we are in good hands. And that's another sort of deeper dimension to what this washing does. So following this ritual wash, we are able to recite the blessing Asher Yatzar, who created. Look it up again, look it up. And I said, I'm really sorry that I'm not able to share the text. I have all of these on a slide on text, but on my phone I can't seem to get it up in terms of share the screen in this way.
Can you send them to us after?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, of course. Yeah. I'll send, for anybody that would like, I'll send the text and the summary of the, and some notes on the lesson as well. So we say Asher Yatzar, which really, the point of Asher Yatzar is appreciating the incredible, the incredibleness almost, if that's right, to marvel at the human body and how marvelous it is. And what a wonder it is. And the more one studies biology, the more one cannot help but be impressed by the way the body works. For some reason, it doesn't have the same emotional impact as when we see something incredible. I don't know, like the Grand Canyon or some incredible, but we recite these blessings every morning after we have experienced and witnessed that our body executing its basic functions and how wondrous it is, and therefore it brings us to wonder about the body, which reflects God's wisdom. And in fact, it's customary to recite this blessing after every instance of using the bathroom throughout the day, but the main ritual is once a day in the morning. And the conclusion of this blessing, we say, we mention God as the healer of all flesh, and we recognize that all the efforts we invest into our health and well-being are the means by which we allow Hashem's blessing to be realized. And I think, this is of course very relevant when we're living through a pandemic, when we have to appreciate that we're making tremendous efforts to try and deal with this, but ultimately God has send us a massive reminder of who's really in charge. And that, yes, we need to do everything we possibly can, but in tandem with that, we need to pray to him and look to him and beseech him that he enables us and allow us to find the vaccines and the cures and all those things that we need and we want to find. And so what we do is we make a double investment. We recognize the true source, which is Hashem as the healer of all flesh, but we also take concrete action. And that's, one action, by the way, is exercise, and Maimonides talks about that, but I don't have time to go into it. Okay, I mentioned earlier that I'm going to come back to language. I want to speak about language for a moment, because we've already examined a few brief prayers and blessings in the morning. We're about to mention more. So I think it's a good time to pause here to talk about the issue of language. There's no question that it's best to pray in Hebrew. And the reason for that is, number one, Hebrew is the unique language of the Jewish people. It's the native expression of the Jewish soul. It's the sacred tongue of the Torah, which was written, in the language with which God created the world. So you don't get much better than that. In addition to that, the majority of our prayers were composed in this language, and they're far more accurate, potent, and rich in their original. Anybody who's translated anything will know that the original is always best. And furthermore, the sages who composed these prayers encoded in their subtle choices of the words and the letters and the vowels various esoteric intentions that are key to the soul of prayer and are entirely lost in translation. However, that said, many of you will know, because I've said this before, I'm a big advocate for the function of the prayers and the crucial for the prayers to function. It's crucial that we understand their plain meaning. And for me, this concern outweighs the benefits of praying in Hebrew. And therefore, as I've said many times before, I would say one who doesn't understand the Hebrew should rightfully pray in English or any familiar language, if you speak a different language, but in English. The only thing I would say is that it's preferable to aim for sort of the best of both worlds, where you to recite the prayers in a language that you understand, but take additional time to study the meaning of the Hebrew prayers, and then enable a sort of gradual transition to Hebrew as and when we become more and more familiar with the Hebrew as we do it, for over a period of time. And that I've found through experience, with others, that that's been very, very helpful and very powerful and very, empowering for people, because sometimes we feel a bit guilty and a bit difficult, say, well, but I don't know in Hebrew and therefore I don't do it at all. Better to do it in English and take, a few words at a time, one line at a time, and say, I understand it now. Even if it's not word for word, I get the concept. I'll do one line in Hebrew, the rest in English, and then 2 lines in Hebrew, the rest in English. And you'll find that over time, you'll get to be able to say the Hebrew as quickly as you would have done the English. So are we there yet? How can we sort of launch into the rest of our morning? Can we grab that coffee that we're so desperate for? Morning coffee, by the way, is maybe a great idea. In fact, according to a very famous halachic authority in the late 1600s, he writes that it's permitted to drink coffee before prayers in order to help one attain presence of mind. And this is codified in the Shulchan Aruch. And in fact, living in Israel, he commented, he says, in Egypt, they can't really focus without their coffee. That's what he writes in the 1600s, in the 17th century. And so he says, if somebody needs a coffee to be able to concentrate on his prayers, that's absolutely permitted. However, we're not quite there yet. Can't reach for the coffee just yet. There's one more thing we need to do in order to start our day on the right foot, and that is the morning blessings. We say these standing up. We first recite a prayer called Elokai Neshama. It's a sort of a more elaborate version of Modeh Ani with deeper insights on the same theme. And then we recite 14 short blessings. We won't have the time to examine all of them. We'll just examine the first few, but I'll give you a flavor, hopefully through the first few, of what these are all about. And I'm sorry that we're going to go over time in terms of the 9 o'clock, but we really effectively sort of started at 8:15. So there's still a little bit to get to. So I'll hope you'll allow me. If somebody does need to leave at 9, I'm really sorry. It's being recorded and you'll be able to catch up. But please bear with me as we go over time on this occasion. I've been pretty good, I think, actually, considering previous courses and so on. I think we've done pretty well to finish at 9. So I'm allowed a one-off. And anyway, it was technical issues that started me late. Okay, so let's look at the first 4 blessings as an example. And again, I'm really sorry I can't bring it up on the screen, but hopefully you'll get a sense of this. So back before alarm clocks sort of got us awake and so on, we had the rooster that performed the daily duty. By the way, in 2013, there was a study when roosters were kept under dim light conditions for 14 days straight. They were quarantined. They still crowed approximately every 24 hours, which suggests that there's sort of some biological clock within them that leads to this phenomena. But either way, for so long we relied on that to wake us up. And in previous generations, this blessing was a way to thank God for providing this unique morning alarm clock. And today we continue to recite this blessing. The blessing is nothing la sech vivina lahafchen ben yom ben laila, which translates loosely as who gives the rooster the understanding to determine between night and day. And so that's what we're doing when we continue today, even with our alarm clocks, we continue to recite this blessing, because what we have in mind is, number one, whichever of God's marvels we use to wake us up in the morning, we still appreciate we have that opportunity, even if it's electronic. And number two, certainly if it's our own children. And number two, the many wonders of nature expressed in the animal kingdom. It's something that gives us an opportunity to appreciate that. As I said earlier, there's many layers to prayers and the meaning of prayers. Another explanation of this blessing is the word sechvi, which is an unusual word for a rooster, also means a human heart. And what we're saying is that we are thanking Hashem for giving us this sort of mental and emotional capacity to distinguish between day and night. And in this circumstance, we mean not only literally, but also day and night as represented between good and bad. Day represents good and night represents bad. And reciting this blessing in the morning is a reminder that throughout the day, we're going to face many choices that will try our moral compass, and for which we'll, going to tap into our inner strength to embrace the good and distance ourselves from the opposite. And we thank God for the ability and the opportunity to be able to distinguish between what is good and what is bad, and hopefully choose the good in our life. The second blessing is over the human ability to see. And the human eye is simply amazing. Right? Charles Darwin considered the human eye one of the toughest challenges to his theory of natural selection, right? Random evolution. And those of you who are familiar with Origin of the Species, he wrote that the idea that natural selection could produce such an intricate organ, and I quote him now, seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest possible degree. That's not my words, that's Charles Darwin, right? That's what he's saying. Because even he recognized that that's challenging to say this was just random. So in order to ensure that we're not taking this miracle for granted, we thank Hashem each day for the blessing of sight. There is another beautiful quote that I came across from Helen Keller. You can look her up, who was blind. Some of you may be familiar, about how people with sight don't appreciate their blessings. She says as follows, she writes this in her book, recently I was visited by a very good friend who had just returned from a long walk in the woods. And I asked her what she had observed. Nothing in particular, she replied. And listen to what Helen writes. I might have been incredulous had I not been accustomed to such responses. And the last line, listen. For long ago, I became convinced that the seeing see little. Meaning, the point is, when a person says nothing in particular, we saw this person walking in the woods would have seen lots of beautiful stuff, but we don't appreciate it necessarily enough. And that's the point that she was making as a blind person, saying, appreciate what you can see, which is really very, very powerful. And on a deeper level, there is the concept of we have eyes, but we don't see morally as well. Where, when we take a long and comprehensive look at life, we realize where we come from, where we are headed, and how we must live properly, right? Non-holiness thrives with the opposite mindset, right? When the big picture fades, the past and the future seem irrelevant, and nothing deep or behind the scenes is noticeable. And that's when people make bad choices. And that's a state of having eyes, but not seeing. And therefore, each morning we thank Hashem for giving us not just the physical ability to see, but also the mental ability to see the full picture, to see the truth, and hopefully behave accordingly, which is obviously such a powerful gift. That's the second blessing. The next blessing is over our ability to stretch and move our limbs. Right? When we sleep, our limbs aren't moving. Well, they're moving a little bit, but right, or stretching, and appear as though we're bound up. And therefore, we say Matir Asurim, who releases those who are bound up. And when we wake up and we return to moving around and stretching, we thank Hashem with this blessing. And on a deeper level, we're referring here to the battle of the two souls within us. See, by nature, the impulsive soul has a greater hold on our sort of conscious character and our choices, which renders the sort of godly soul its prisoner. That's our default position. The godly soul wants to find joy.
Do you mind saying that again?
Yeah, saying that our impulsive soul, which I'm using the word impulsive soul here, I didn't want to use the word our evil inclination because that's a bit sharp. But the sense of impulse has a much greater hold on our conscious and our choices than our sort of moral conscious and it's sometimes a fight to sort of allow the moral conscience to overcome our impulses and our desires. And therefore, sometimes it's almost like it's held prisoner, that we need to release it to be able to overcome that battle. And that's, again, on a deeper level, what we're saying to God, thank you for giving us not only impulses and desires, but morality and ethics to be able to overcome and choose and do that which is right. And the next blessing, and so that's all really we'll have time for, but hopefully I'm giving you enough of a taste that you can go, appreciate these and go in your own time and look into and use the wonderful opportunities that we have, which I'll come to in a moment, to understand more about our prayers and our blessings in general. So the next one is the ability to sit up. And by the way, the reason it's this way is because the rabbis originally composed these as a way of making the blessing as you do it. So today we come to shul or we're at home and we do it all in one long list. but actually they were originally composed as I do it, I'm making this blessing. So as a person woke up, they would say Modeh Ani. As they wash their hands, as you sit up, you make that blessing. As you stand up, you make the next blessing. It was a series of blessings to giving. As you get dressed, you make the next blessing. As you put your shoes on, you make the next blessing. Today we do it for various reasons, historical reasons, which I don't have time to go into, as a series of blessings. But that's why there is such a particular order to what was being done. It followed your routine in the morning, and at every moment of our routine, we sort of thanked Hashem and appreciated what we're able to do. The ability to get out of this sort of horizontal position and prop our bodies up is something that we, of course, appreciate. And the reason we appreciate it, because you might say, well, that's the same as stretching our limbs. Why is it not part of the previous blessing? What we're appreciating there is we're not like an animal. You see, the animal kingdom, the head, the mind and the heart are on the same level, right? They are equal. With a human, we sit up, we stand up, and we say, you know what? Which one should rule over the other? Our mind, our heads should rule over our heart. That is the priority order. That's the way it should be. And so therefore, by sitting up, we're saying to Hashem, thank you for making me a human and not an animal, in the ability and the opportunity to have our heads and our minds rule over our hearts and our desires. Ideally, right? We don't always make it, but at least at this point, before we get started, appreciate that we have that ability, and we've got half a chance of actually being able to make it once we get there. So that, and by the way, that's the underlying message and theme also of the Dayenu song, right? I know it seems so long ago of Pesach, but we break down the odyssey of the Jewish people into many individual miracles to thank God for each thing individually, and that's part of what we're doing. That we try and appreciate every little thing that we have and be grateful for it and show our gratitude and thank God for it. As I said, these are just 4 of the 14 that recited, and I encourage you to recite these blessings, all of them each morning, and hopefully you now have a deeper appreciation at least of the first 4, and I hope we'll have another opportunity at some point to examine the rest of them. But if we don't, we all have the opportunity and the ability, either online or in our various wonderful Sidurim through the Art Scroll of Koren, whichever one that works for you, has beautiful explanations and insights for all of these things. So let me finish off now, with, we're going to jump to the final section of the morning blessings. Throughout history, Jews have been deeply devoted to Torah study. Right? For example, King David would awaken at the stroke of midnight and spend the rest of the night studying Torah, and Jews have made great sacrifices, as we know, to teach, to study and to teach and to observe the Torah. We know they're giving up their lives. It's been really kihem chayenu, we say in our prayers. It is our life. It's what we this value that it's our life. It's expressed by the mandate that every Jew should study at least some Torah each day. Now, of course, Torah is vast and it covers many topics, as I just said in the beginning. It covers everything of life, and everyone can find an entry point. And today, and I've said this before, and it bears repeating, and I make no apology for repeating it. With online access, and it has been so beautifully demonstrated over the coronavirus period. And if I mentioned before, I mentioned again, the silver linings that we need to take is the opportunities that we have today with online access to engage with Torah, to engage with community, to engage with prayer, whatever it may be. But with online access and the translation of so many of our texts, the study of Torah is accessible to absolutely everyone, of every age, of every level of intelligence, of every language, of every education, of every time slot that you have. There's something that can be found, and I urge you and encourage you to make the most of that. And so if we're trying to imbue our home with more Judaism, which is what this is all about, even if we're forced to be doing this at this stage, but actually from a positive sense, that's what we should be doing. Two great steps to take are, number one, build, if you haven't already, build a library of Jewish books. And number two, study some Torah each day. And if we're able to build this into our morning routine, all the better. In fact, our liturgy builds Torah study into our morning routines, as we'll see that following the blessings, we actually recite 2 beautiful Torah texts after we make the blessings. So given the centrality of Torah to the Jewish future, we recite each morning no less than 3 blessings that are about our connection to Torah. In the first of the 3, we are reminded here that it talks about engaging in Torah study, that the study of Torah is a commandment. It's not a hobby or something we do for fun. It can be fun. It can be very enjoyable. Admittedly, it not always is, but we strive to study for the mitzvah, for the connection that we have to God via this. The words of the Torah, as with the prayer, there's a focus in Judaism in verbalizing the Torah that we study. Right, the library scene with sort of people quietly reading their books is definitely not a traditional Jewish Torah study scene. You won't see that in any Beit HaMidrash. What we want more than that is to be able to verbalize it. That's why verbalization is called for when we talk about the words of the Torah. We say la'asok b'divrei Torah, to engage in the words of the Torah. It doesn't say to engage in Torah. We engage in the words where we verbalize the ideas and arguments. We gain a better and deeper understanding. And then we proceed to the next blessing. And this blessing beseeches Hashem to help us find the Torah to be personally meaningful, right? Because it's not easy, not always is. And we also ask him to ensure that our children, and all Jewish children, continue to study Torah in the future. And this demonstrates that Torah study is crucial to the survival of our nation. And so a good argument can be made that really the first one leads to the second, right? So if we connect to Torah, then we'll have it with it. But the point that we're making over here is that if we find Torah enjoyable and relatable, if it's meaningful, there's a better chance that our children will want to study it too. And that's really a very powerful point. The ending of this blessing underscores the importance of studying Torah for its own sake, not for sort of self-aggrandizement or for self-gain, but for the sake of the mitzvah, for the sake of the connection that we generated with Hashem when we sort of contemplate His wisdom and will. The final of the three blessings, and I'll finish with this, may be familiar to all of us, and it's the same blessing that we recite, or is recited before one receives an aliyah in shul. It talks about how God has chosen us and chooses the Torah, Noten HaTorah, the giver of the Torah. Immediately after these three blessings, and I'm sorry, I noticed, Ben, you very cleverly, I see that you've got a siddur in front of you. Have I spotted correctly? Thank you. I should have said that to you earlier. For anybody that has to be able to have to hand a siddur, please do pick it up. But we're now at the end of it. But if that still is relevant, then if you can quickly and easily grab a siddur, you'll find this as part of the morning blessings. But so that was very smart. So where was I? Yeah, the final blessing is familiar because it's what's recited when a person's called up to the Torah. And immediately after these three blessings, we recite, as I mentioned earlier, two passages of the Torah, one from the written Torah and one from the oral Torah. Because once we made a blessing on something, we have to perform the act, right? We can't make a blessing then not do it. So having made a blessing on the mitzvah of study Torah, we then study Torah. And therefore, we do two parts. We do from the written and oral to demonstrate that they're both equally important, valid, and so on. And that means we'll fulfill the mitzvah on a minimalistic level of studying Torah each day. The rabbis, therefore, helped us in fulfilling that commandment. And it underscores the importance of both dimensions of the Torah, the written and the oral Torah. What we do first is the first is the priestly blessing. That's what they chose, the priestly blessing. And the second is a Mishnah with parts from the Talmud that mentions many commandments, feeding the poor and honoring parents and hosting guests and honoring the dead, bringing peace between parties and more. And it concludes, and the study of Torah is equivalent to them all. Now, Maimonides explains that the Torah study leads us to know how to behave, which is why its value is so great. So in other words, the value of Torah study is not in place of action, but because it best enables action. So when we say the study of Torah is equivalent to them all, it doesn't mean I'll sit and study all day. It means by studying Torah, I will end up doing all of these things. That's the purpose of it. It enables the action. We know what we need to do. And it turns out that therefore this statement is really a great compliment to Torah study, but an even greater compliment to a call to action, which is what Judaism is all about. It's not about being a Jew at heart, but it's about being a Jew in practice. And therefore this teaches us an important lesson about deeds and actions in Judaism. It's not by faith and feeling alone that one lives as a Jew. We are meant to take concrete action in all spheres of our life, as I explained earlier in this session. And so we conclude our morning blessings with a strong call to study that leads to action. And I think that's a fitting place to close today's before I open it for questions. I mean, as you know, you can always ask questions in the middle, but I sort of until I end. We examined tonight Jewish actions that we take from the second we awake in the morning through to the morning blessings. And if we're able to implement this into our lives, we'd enhance our mornings in a very Jewish way, and will enhance them generally. I get a sense we've covered a lot of ground in today's session, and it might be difficult to sort of take it all in at once. But as it is with all matters of Judaism, and as I've said many times before, Judaism is not an all or nothing religion. The main objective is steady progress, to learn, to be able to take on bit by bit. It's a ladder. Prayer is, as we mentioned in the series that we did on prayer, it's about a ladder. It's a real sign of progress, and saying, you know, if the main objective, if we have this steady progress, which is the real sign that something is alive and well, then we're going to achieve more, we're going to grow more, and we'll have a more meaningful morning, and therefore more meaningful day, and more purposeful day, which will help our emotional balance and all, you know, all the mental health challenges that we have. And once we get after this point, right, onto the coffee and enjoy.
Hello, can I ask a question again?
Of course.
Sorry.
You can, Elizabeth.
Okay, so my question is this. I try to say it every day. I started about a year and a half ago. Embarrassingly, I still sing it like my kids were taught at Southampton, Hader.
There's nothing embarrassing about that at all.
I only know it by singing it. What happens, and it has happened, if you forget to say it? I find myself saying it later because I feel bad I haven't said it.
Sorry, what is the it? Apologies.
So if you have forgotten to say the blessing when you first wake up.
Yeah. Which one?
Moda Ani.
Oh, Moda Ani. Yeah, you can say it at any time. Anytime.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
Moda Ani can be said at any time, because bearing in mind, if its inherent messages, although are most relevant to when we first wake up, what we then do is transform that moment we're saying it into a moment of pausing to achieve the same purpose for the rest of the day wherever we are. Gratitude can be expressed anytime. There's never a bad time for gratitude.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Anybody else?
Maybe Helen Keller's visitor didn't want her to feel bad, so when she asked her in response to the question, what did you see in the woods, she said nothing in particular, because she didn't want her to feel she was missing out.
Of course. No, you're absolutely right, Penny. And I'm sure, and Helen talks about this in the book, and that's always the danger of picking out one little bit. But you're right. And what Helen was saying is, don't feel bad for me in that way. Appreciate and enjoy. And just because I can't enjoy doesn't mean you shouldn't appreciate and value everything that you have. And I have if you want more on that, read her book and look it up. But no, it's a very valid point. And I was just trying to bring out the concept of that. Sometimes we just take things for granted around us. And this is a moment to pause and appreciate the beauty of nature around us. But yes, absolutely valid point. And I'm sure that is exactly what her friend, what was behind it.
Number one, sorry I'm late. Number two,
yeah.
Secondly, so what about the animalistic soul? You talked before, Shlomo, about the other soul when we wake up, or we lose a bit. But in earlier sessions, you talked about the animalistic soul. So where does that fit in now?
No, that is the animalistic soul. So I just gave it a different, for the purposes of here, I gave it a different name, but it's all wrapped in the same thing. It's all part of the same thing. The sort of animalistic soul, which is the evil inclination called, or animalistic soul, or various ways of referring to it. I just felt in the context of where I was, I felt that was a way I wanted to express it in contrast to the morality and ethics.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, look, thank you so much for joining. As I said last time, it's a JLI with a difference. But hopefully I've been able to give not only the technical and practical stuff, but meaning to that routine that we have, and therefore meaning to our entire day. And this really, I cannot stress enough, is a small window into so much more that there is to be said about all of our prayers. And we'll look at some of those more. We'll look at those in the coming weeks. But here it was an insight into the morning routine. I hope that's been helpful and meaningful to you, and will help you start your day off in a meaningful way, so that you can have a meaningful and purposeful day, each and every day. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Shlomo.
Thanks, Shlomo.
Apologies again for the technical issues.
What technical issues?
Oh, you joined afterwards.
Could I get a copy of the notes?
Yes, of course. Yes, absolutely. I'll send them to you, Sam. Yeah.
Thank you. Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you next week. Bye bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.